The Apache warrior saved him, and now she demands that the rancher become her husband. John Miller had always been a man of routine. His life on the sprawling Arizona ranch was quiet and predictable, shaped by the sun rising over the dry plains and the steady work that kept his property in order. He had inherited the ranch from his father, who had taught him everything about cattle, horses, and the unforgiving life of the frontier. John loved the rhythm of this work, the smell of hay in the morning, the soft neighing of horses, the endless horizon that seemed to stretch forever. Yet, despite the beauty of his surroundings, there was a certain loneliness that shadowed his life. His work was rewarding, but it left little room for companionship or adventure beyond the routines he knew so well. One afternoon, the heat of the sun beat down harder than usual. John had saddled his horse, a strong chestnut mare named Bella, and decided to inspect the northern fence line, where he had noticed a few posts that needed repair. The plains were vast, and traveling across them often meant long stretches without seeing another soul. He rode carefully, scanning the landscape for any sign of trouble, though he had never expected trouble to come so close to home. As he guided Bella along the winding path between dry shrubs and scattered rocks, he sensed something was off. The silence that usually comforted him felt heavy and tense. Birds that typically sang in the afternoon had gone quiet, and even Bella seemed uneasy, her ears flicking in all directions. Before he could react, a sharp sound of galloping hooves approached from behind, and a group of men appeared on horseback, their faces partially covered and their intentions clear. John's heart pounded in his chest as he realized he was being ambushed. The men were thieves who had been tracking ranchers in the area, looking to steal livestock or valuables. John, though experienced with the land, was no match for the numbers against him. One of the men drew a weapon, shouting that John should surrender everything he had. Fear surged through him, but he forced himself to stay calm, knowing that panic would only make things worse. He tried to reason with them, offering what little cash he carried, but the men were determined, their eyes cold and unforgiving. As the situation grew more dangerous, John felt a sharp pain as one of the men struck him with the flat of a weapon, sending him stumbling off Bella's back. He tried to push himself up, but another man grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the edge of a small ravine. His strength was fading, and he realized that if no help arrived soon, he might not survive this encounter. Just as despair began to take hold, a sound unlike any other filled the air, a whistle, sharp and commanding, followed by a flurry of movement that seemed almost impossible. From behind a ridge, a figure emerged, moving with a grace and power that John had never seen. She was a woman, strong and fearless, her movements swift and precise. She carried a bow and arrow, and with each motion, her arrows found their mark, disarming the attackers with remarkable accuracy. The thieves faltered, surprised and frightened by this sudden and skillful intervention. John could hardly believe what he was witnessing. The woman, Naeli, an Apache warrior, did not hesitate. She fought with a combination of strength, intelligence, and courage that left John in awe. In mere moments, the attackers were driven back, retreating in confusion and fear. Naeli approached John with calm authority, her eyes scanning the horizon to ensure no one remained nearby. John struggled to find his voice, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. "You're safe now," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "But you should not be out here alone. This land can be dangerous if you are unprepared." John nodded, still catching his breath, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? How had she appeared so suddenly? And most importantly, why had she risked herself to save him? He wanted to speak, to thank her properly, but the words seemed inadequate for the magnitude of what had just happened. Naeli offered him a hand, helping him to stand, and John noticed the strength in her grip. It was clear that she was no ordinary woman. As they walked toward a nearby shaded area, John tried to learn more about her. Naeli spoke little at first, focusing instead on tending to his minor injuries, cleaning cuts and bruises with practiced hands. He watched her, fascinated by her calm demeanor and the efficiency with which she moved. There was a sense of discipline and purpose in everything she did. John realized that she had likely spent years training herself, mastering skills that went far beyond anything he could imagine. "Why did you help me?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Naeli looked at him, her dark eyes steady and serious. "Because it was the right thing to do. No one deserves to die if it can be prevented. You were in danger and I could not let it happen." Her words struck John deeply. In a world where survival often meant looking out only for oneself, Naeli's actions were a powerful reminder of courage and selflessness. He felt gratitude, yes, but also a growing curiosity and respect for the woman who had risked her life for a stranger. The two of them sat in the shade as John regained some strength, and Naeli shared fragments of her life. She spoke of her people, the Apache, their traditions and the values that guided her. John listened intently, captivated by her stories. They were tales of resilience, honor, and a deep connection to the land that mirrored his own love for his ranch. Despite the differences in their worlds, he felt an unexpected sense of kinship with her. As the afternoon sun began to dip toward the horizon, John realized that he had been changed by this encounter. His ordinary day on the ranch had transformed into something extraordinary, and he could not shake the feeling that meeting Naeli was not a mere coincidence. She had entered his life like a force of nature, unexpected, powerful, and unforgettable. Before leaving, Naeli gave him one final piece of advice. "Be careful. There are others out there who would take what is not theirs, and remember, courage alone is not enough. You must be wise as well." John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He watched as she disappeared into the shadows of the plains, moving with the same strength and grace that had first captivated him. He was left alone, but not the same as before. The fear and uncertainty had faded, replaced by a mix of gratitude, admiration, and a newfound awareness of the dangers and wonders of the world around him. That night, as John returned to his ranch and tended to his horses, he thought of Naeli constantly. He knew that this encounter was just the beginning of something larger than himself, a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, courage, and connection. The plains seemed different now, more alive, more unpredictable, yet filled with possibilities. And somewhere out there, a warrior watched over him, a reminder that even in the harshest land, acts of bravery and kindness could change the course of a life forever. The memory of her eyes, her strength, and her courage lingered in his mind. John knew one thing with certainty. He would never forget the day he was saved by an Apache warrior, and he could not help but wonder what destiny had in store for both of them in the days to come. After the harrowing attack, John Miller could not shake the memory of Naeli, the Apache warrior who had saved his life. His body had healed enough for him to walk, but his mind was restless. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see her moving with strength and precision, her dark eyes sharp and unwavering. It was not only her bravery that fascinated him, it was the sense of purpose she carried, a calm certainty that came from living a life of discipline and honor. The day after the attack, Naeli returned to check on him. She had brought supplies, including food, water, and herbal remedies for his injuries. John was struck by her thoughtfulness and attention to detail. She had not only saved him from immediate danger, but had also ensured that his recovery would be steady and safe. She encouraged him to stay at her camp for a few more days until he regained full strength, explaining that the journey across the plains was not safe for a man still weak from wounds. John hesitated. He had always valued his independence and pride, and the idea of staying with someone he barely knew made him uneasy. Yet, he also knew that her offer was practical and wise. There was no one else to care for him, and attempting to return to his ranch too soon could be dangerous. After a brief internal struggle, he agreed, realizing that Nayeli had saved his life not only through combat but through her careful planning and foresight. The journey to her camp was slow. John rode Bella while Nayeli walked beside him, keeping a careful watch on the surrounding terrain. She spoke little during the ride, but when she did, her words were thoughtful and instructive. She taught him to observe the signs of the land, how to notice tracks of animals, how to sense changes in the wind that might indicate danger, and how to move quietly through the brush. John listened carefully, impressed by her knowledge and the ease with which she moved through the wilderness. When they arrived at Nayeli's camp, John was struck by its organization and simplicity. Unlike the structured life on his ranch, her camp was a collection of tents and fire pits arranged thoughtfully within a clearing. Everything had a purpose, and everything was in its place. Nayeli introduced him to the few others who lived in the camp, explaining that her people were nomadic, moving from place to stay in harmony with the land. Though they were few in number, each person had a role and contributed to the survival of the group. John admired the sense of community, so different from the isolated life he had known. Over the next several days, Nayeli tended to John's injuries with skill and patience. She cleaned his cuts and bandaged bruises, always explaining what she was doing and why. John noticed that her hands were strong yet gentle, capable of precise and careful movements. During these moments, he began to appreciate not only her physical strength, but also her wisdom and the thoughtfulness behind her actions. She had saved his life through courage, yes, but she was also saving it through knowledge and care, a combination he found remarkable. As John recovered, he found himself drawn into conversations with Nayeli. She spoke of her people's history, their traditions, and their connection to the land. She explained that the Apache valued honor, bravery, and respect for all living things. John listened attentively, fascinated by her stories and the depth of meaning behind each action she described. He realized that her life, though challenging, was guided by a code that gave her clarity and purpose, something he admired deeply. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Nayeli shared a more personal story. She spoke of her family, lost at a young age, and how she had learned to survive in the harsh environment of the plains. She told him about the training she had undergone to become a warrior, learning to hunt, track, and defend herself. John was captivated by her resilience and determination. It was clear that her strength was not only physical, but also mental and emotional, forged through years of experience and hardship. John began to feel a sense of respect and admiration for Nayeli that went beyond gratitude. He realized that meeting her had opened his eyes to a world he had never known, a world of courage, skill, and deep connection to nature. He was drawn to her presence, not only because she had saved his life, but because she challenged him to see life differently, to consider perspectives beyond his own. As they spent time together, John also began to notice the small acts of kindness Nayeli performed, not just for him, but for others in the camp. She helped gather firewood, prepared meals, and offered guidance to younger members of her group. Every action reflected thoughtfulness and consideration, traits that John admired and respected. He began to understand that her strength was balanced by compassion, a rare combination that made her extraordinary in his eyes. Nayeli, too, observed John carefully. She saw his resilience, his willingness to learn, and his respect for her people's ways. Though he came from a different world, she recognized qualities in him that made him worthy of trust. Slowly, she began to open up to him, sharing more of her life and her culture, allowing him a glimpse into the values and traditions that shaped her. This exchange of stories and experiences created a bond between them, one built on mutual respect and understanding rather than mere necessity. During the days that followed, John's recovery progressed steadily. He regained his strength and confidence, though he still felt cautious about returning to his ranch. Nayeli encouraged him to take small steps, reminding him that healing was not only about the body, but also about understanding the dangers that surrounded him. She continued to teach him survival skills, from tracking animals to reading the weather and identifying safe paths through the wilderness. John absorbed everything, realizing that her teachings were as valuable as her courage in the fight that had saved his life. One morning, as John practiced tracking small animals with Nayeli's guidance, he asked her why she risked herself to save a stranger. Nayeli paused, considering her answer carefully. "It is not bravery for its own sake," she said. "It is a choice. A life can be taken in an instant, and if it can be saved, it should be. That is the way of honor." John reflected on her words. He had always thought of bravery as grand gestures or heroic acts, but he began to understand that true courage involved thoughtfulness, wisdom, and a sense of responsibility. Nayeli's actions were not reckless. They were guided by a deep understanding of life and the consequences of action. John felt a mixture of awe and humility, realizing that his world had expanded far beyond the boundaries of his ranch. As the days turned into a week, John found himself enjoying Nayeli's company more than he expected. They shared meals, exchanged stories, and even laughed at small mishaps along the way. For the first time in years, John felt a sense of companionship and connection that went beyond friendship. It was a quiet, steady bond, built on trust and shared experience, and it left him both comforted and curious about what the future might hold. Nayeli noticed the change in him as well. She saw his respect for her people, his willingness to learn, and his openness to new experiences. Though she remained focused on her duties and responsibilities, she could not ignore the connection that was forming between them. She recognized that this bond was unusual, crossing boundaries of culture and experience, yet it felt natural and meaningful. By the end of the second week, John had regained full strength. He was ready to return to his ranch, but he hesitated. The thought of leaving Nayeli's camp, of returning to the solitude of his life, made him realize how much her presence had influenced him. She had not only saved his life, but had also opened his heart and mind to new possibilities. As he prepared to leave, Nayeli approached him, offering a simple but powerful gesture, a hand to shake, a nod of respect, and a quiet understanding that their connection was not yet over. "You have learned much," she said softly, "but there is more to life than survival. Remember that courage, respect, and wisdom must always guide your actions. You are stronger than you know." John nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate within him. He mounted Bella, glancing back at the camp one last time. Nayeli stood there watching him leave, her expression calm but thoughtful. He knew that this was not the end of their story. Their paths had crossed for a reason, and he could not ignore the pull he felt toward her, nor the lessons she had taught him about bravery, honor, and connection. As he rode back toward his ranch, John reflected on everything he had experienced. Nayeli's courage had saved his life, but her wisdom had changed him in ways he was only beginning to understand. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, respect, and curiosity about what lay ahead. For the first time, he realized that life could be richer and more meaningful when one embraced not only survival, but also connection, understanding, and trust. That night, as John sat by his fire, he thought of Nayeli constantly. He could still see her dark eyes, hear her voice, and feel the strength and purpose that radiated from her every action. He understood that this encounter had shifted the course of his life, and he could not help but wonder what the future would hold for both of them. One thing was certain. The bond that had formed in those days of healing and teaching was powerful, and it would shape the days to come in. While John Miller returned to his ranch after weeks of healing and learning with Nayeli, the Apache warrior who had saved his life. At first, everything felt familiar: the scent of hay, the soft sounds of Bella the horse, the rhythm of his chores. But John soon realized that he was no longer the same man who had ridden out across the plains weeks before. Naomi's teachings, her courage, and her wisdom had left a deep impression on him. His body had recovered, but his mind was restless. He found himself thinking constantly about her, about the lessons she had taught him, and about the quiet moments they had shared in her camp. One morning, as he repaired a broken fence near the northern edge of his property, a shadow fell across the land. John looked up and was surprised to see Naomi standing there, her presence as striking as the first day he had met her. She approached with quiet confidence, her dark eyes calm but serious. "I came to see you," she said simply. "There is something important we must discuss." John felt a mixture of joy and unease. He had hoped to see her again, yet he could not predict what this visit would bring. He guided her into the shade of a large oak tree, where they could speak privately. Naomi's expression was steady, but her voice carried a weight that made John sense that what she was about to say would change everything. "There is a tradition among my people," Naomi began. "It is not often spoken of to outsiders, but in my culture, when a warrior saves a life, there is a responsibility that comes with that act. A life cannot be taken lightly, and when it is saved, a bond is formed." John listened intently, sensing that this was more than a casual remark. Naomi continued, "That bond is sacred. It carries with it the expectation that the person saved will honor the life giver. In some cases, it is expected that a man who is saved will become the husband of the woman who has saved him. This is not done for selfish reasons. It is a matter of respect, duty, and the continuation of honor." John's mind raced. He had never encountered a situation like this. In his world, gratitude was shown with thanks, perhaps a gift, but not with a marriage obligation. The thought of marrying someone he barely knew was overwhelming. Yet he could not dismiss Naomi's words lightly. They were spoken with sincerity, not demand, and he could see the weight of her culture in every line of her face. I don't know what to say," John admitted, his voice uncertain. "This is not how things work where I come from. Marriage is a choice, a partnership built on understanding and trust, not an obligation." Naomi nodded, her expression patient but firm. "I understand your hesitation. I do not ask this lightly. It is a sacred duty in my eyes, but it is also a choice for you. You may honor it or decline, but I had to speak the truth. To refuse without understanding would be disrespectful to both of us." John struggled to reconcile his upbringing with her expectations. He had been raised to value independence, to make his own choices, and to think rationally about life and survival. Yet, Naomi's words spoke of something deeper, a sense of duty that transcended his understanding. He realized that this was not a simple request. It was a challenge to consider a life that was far different from his own, a life intertwined with someone whose courage and wisdom he respected deeply. Over the next few days, John wrestled with his thoughts. He spoke to no one but Bella, confiding his fears and confusion in the quiet of the stables. He knew that if he accepted Naomi's proposal, he would be stepping into a world completely unknown to him. But if he refused, he risked disappointing the woman who had saved his life, a woman who had opened his eyes to new possibilities and perspectives. Every moment he spent alone, he returned to the image of her dark eyes, the calm strength in her posture, and the unwavering courage that had changed his life forever. Naomi, aware of John's struggle, gave him space but remained nearby. She did not pressure him or demand an immediate answer. Instead, she continued her duties, showing him through her actions the values of her culture: honor, respect, patience, and wisdom. John watched her, realizing that her life was a constant practice of principles he had only begun to understand. Slowly, he began to see that this proposal was not about control or obligation, but about trust, commitment, and a bond that transcended ordinary understanding. One evening, As the sun set over the rolling plains, John decided to speak to Nayeli. He found her near the edge of a creek, tending to a small fire and preparing food for her people. He approached cautiously, unsure of how to begin, but determined to face the decision he had been avoiding. "Nayeli," he said quietly, "I have thought about what you told me. I cannot pretend to fully understand your traditions, but I do know that you saved my life. And in saving it, you showed me courage, wisdom, and strength I never imagined. I want to understand, to learn, and to honor what you have asked of me." Nayeli looked at him carefully, her expression unreadable at first. Then a small smile touched her lips and she nodded. "That is all I could hope for. You do not need to understand everything at once. Marriage, like life, is a journey. If you choose to accept, we will face it together, learning from each other and building a life with respect, courage, and understanding." John felt a wave of relief and anticipation. The decision was daunting, but it also opened the door to a future he had never imagined. He realized that his life, once confined to the boundaries of his ranch, was now connected to a world of bravery, honor, and deep meaning. Nayeli had not only saved him physically, but had also challenged him to grow emotionally and spiritually. Over the following weeks, John and Nayeli spent more time together, learning about each other's worlds. Nayeli taught him the customs and values of her people, explaining the importance of honor, respect, and courage in every action. John shared stories of life on the ranch, his responsibilities, and the challenges he faced in maintaining his property and livelihood. They discovered that despite their different backgrounds, they shared many values: hard work, integrity, and a deep respect for life. As their bond deepened, John found himself thinking less about the cultural differences and more about the person before him. Nayeli's bravery, wisdom, and kindness had touched him in ways he could not describe. He realized that marriage, in this context, was not merely a duty, but also an opportunity to build a partnership based on mutual respect and admiration. The idea that had once filled him with fear now carried a sense of promise and possibility. Nayeli, in turn, observed John with careful attention. She saw his willingness to learn, his respect for her traditions, and his openness to new experiences. She recognized that he was not simply agreeing out of obligation, but because he truly valued the bond they were forming. This recognition brought her a quiet satisfaction, for she had chosen to save his life knowing that such a connection required more than physical protection. It required trust, understanding, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. The turning point came one afternoon when John accompanied Nayeli on a short journey to check the northern pasture. As they rode together, she taught him how to move quietly through the terrain, how to observe the tracks of animals, and how to anticipate changes in the wind and weather. John realized that every lesson was not only practical but also symbolic, teaching him patience, awareness, and respect for life in all its forms. In that moment, he understood that marrying Nayeli would not be a limitation, but an extension of the growth he had already begun. By the end of the journey, John felt a sense of clarity he had not experienced before. He looked at Nayeli, standing strong and confident, and he knew that his decision was no longer about obligation but about choice. He had come to admire her deeply, not only for saving his life but for the person she was: brave, wise, compassionate, and unwavering in her principles. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, John spoke to Nayeli with certainty. "I accept your proposal," he said, "not out of duty, but because I respect you, trust you, and want to share my life with you. I do not fully understand everything about your traditions yet, but I am willing to learn and grow with you." Nayeli's eyes softened, and a smile spread across her face. "Then we begin a journey together," she said, "a journey of respect, learning, and partnership. We will face challenges, but together We will honor what brought us here and build a life guided by courage, understanding, and trust. For John, this moment marked a new chapter in his life. The fear and uncertainty that had once clouded his thoughts were replaced by anticipation, hope, and a deep sense of respect for the woman who had changed everything. Nayeli had not only saved his life, but had also opened his heart to a future filled with possibilities, partnership, and shared courage. As they returned to the ranch that evening, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy, filled with challenges and learning, but he also knew that with Nayeli by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. The bond they shared, formed in the crucible of danger and strengthened by mutual respect, would guide them into a future neither could have imagined before that fateful day on the plains. John Miller's life had already changed in ways he could never have imagined. Yet the challenges he now faced were more complex than any he had encountered on the plains or in his ranch work. Accepting Nayeli's proposal was not a simple matter. It meant embracing a world very different from his own, a world shaped by traditions, values, and expectations he had only begun to understand. As he returned to his ranch, he realized that his life was no longer solely his own. Every choice, every action, now had the potential to affect not only him, but also Nayeli and the bond they had forged. For the first few days, John tried to settle back into his routine on the ranch. He rode Bella to inspect fences, tended to the cattle, and repaired broken equipment. On the surface, everything seemed normal, yet he felt a constant pull toward Nayeli, a sense that his life had expanded beyond the boundaries of the ranch. He found himself thinking about the lessons she had taught him, how to read the land, how to notice subtle signs of danger, how to approach life with patience and awareness. These lessons were practical, yes, but they were also philosophical, shaping his thinking and influencing his actions in ways he could not ignore. Nayeli, meanwhile, faced challenges of her own. Though she had accepted John's decision with quiet satisfaction, she knew that her people would watch their relationship closely. In Apache tradition, she was expected to uphold her duties and maintain honor within her community. Marrying someone from outside the tribe was uncommon, and while not forbidden, it required careful consideration and respect. Nayeli worried that if their relationship was not handled thoughtfully, it could create tension between her world and John's, potentially causing misunderstandings or even resentment. Despite these concerns, Nayeli made the journey to John's ranch often, staying with him for days at a time. She assisted with chores, observed his routines, and shared her knowledge of survival and the land. At first, John was hesitant to let her fully participate in his world, fearing that his ranch work might overwhelm or confuse her. But he quickly realized that Nayeli was adaptable, capable, and eager to learn. She handled the cattle with skill, repaired fences with precision, and even offered suggestions that improved efficiency. John was amazed at how quickly she integrated herself into his life, blending her strengths with the work he had done for years. However, not everyone in John's world was supportive. Friends and neighbors, curious about the newcomer, asked questions and made remarks that were often insensitive or dismissive. They did not understand Nayeli's culture or the bond that had formed between her and John. Some warned him against marrying outside his world, suggesting that he might regret his decision or face social difficulties. Others questioned her motives, not realizing the depth of trust, respect, and connection that had developed between the two. John listened to these opinions but found that they had little impact on his heart or judgment. He knew that Nayeli was honorable, courageous, and wise, and he trusted her completely. The challenges were not only external. John also struggled internally, trying to reconcile his upbringing with the demands of this new relationship. He had grown up valuing independence, practicality, and personal freedom. Nayeli's world emphasized duty, honor, and collective responsibility. At times, he felt torn between his instincts and the expectations she had introduced. He questioned whether he was capable of fully embracing her traditions, whether he could live in a way that honored both his life and hers. These doubts weighed heavily on him, creating moments of uncertainty and introspection. Nayeli, perceptive and patient, recognized John's struggle. She did not chastise or pressure him. Instead, she guided him gently, using lessons from her culture to help him understand the importance of balance. She explained that marriage and partnership were not about limiting freedom, but about creating a bond built on respect, trust, and mutual growth. She encouraged him to see challenges as opportunities, to embrace differences as a chance to learn and expand his perspective. Slowly, John began to internalize these lessons, realizing that the very struggles he faced were shaping him into a better, more thoughtful person. The tension between their worlds became more apparent when John invited Nayeli to attend a gathering with his neighbors. It was a small event, a routine social meeting where ranchers exchanged stories and advice. Nayeli, dressed simply but elegantly, observed quietly as John introduced her to others. At first, the neighbors were curious, their questions cautious and sometimes awkward. They had never met someone like Nayeli and did not fully understand her background or the traditions she represented. John noticed their hesitation and felt a protective instinct rise within him. Nayeli, however, handled the situation with grace and composure. She answered questions politely, sharing insights about her culture without arrogance or defensiveness. She demonstrated respect for John's world while remaining true to her own values. By the end of the gathering, even the skeptical neighbors had begun to see her in a new light. Her calm confidence, intelligence, and kindness left a lasting impression, and John felt a surge of pride and admiration. He realized that Nayeli's presence was not a threat but a bridge between two worlds, a reminder that understanding and respect could overcome even the widest gaps in culture and experience. Despite these moments of harmony, challenges persisted. Differences in lifestyle, expectations, and daily routines sometimes led to misunderstandings. John, accustomed to working long hours and prioritizing the ranch, sometimes struggled to appreciate Nayeli's emphasis on reflection, patience, and connection to the land in a different way. Nayeli, in turn, occasionally felt frustrated by John's insistence on doing things a certain way, even when alternative methods might be more efficient or aligned with her teachings. These moments of tension were not hostile, but required careful negotiation, communication, and empathy. Over time, each challenge became an opportunity to strengthen their relationship, teaching them both the value of compromise and understanding. One particularly challenging day highlighted these differences. A sudden storm approached, bringing heavy rain and strong winds. John wanted to secure the cattle immediately, while Nayeli insisted on checking the surrounding land first to anticipate potential hazards. At first, John was impatient, frustrated by what he perceived as unnecessary delay. Nayeli, sensing his frustration, calmly explained her reasoning. By observing patterns in the wind, the clouds, and the terrain, she could predict areas where cattle might become trapped or injured. John reluctantly followed her guidance, and by the end of the storm, he realized that her approach had prevented potential disaster. This experience reinforced the importance of patience, trust, and learning from one another. As weeks turned into months, John and Nayeli developed a rhythm in their partnership. They combined the strengths of their worlds, blending ranch life with Apache traditions. They worked side by side, tending to the land and animals, sharing meals and planning for the future. Their conversations deepened, exploring not only practical matters but also philosophy, values, and dreams. John began to see that their differences were not obstacles but complementary strengths that enriched their lives. Nayeli, too, appreciated John's determination, resourcefulness, and steadfast character, qualities that supported her own principles and ambitions. Amid these efforts, John also reflected on the emotional growth he had experienced. He had always considered himself capable and resilient, but Nayeli's influence had introduced new dimensions to his understanding of courage, compassion, and partnership. He realized that true strength involved not only physical skill, but also empathy, patience, and the ability to navigate challenges with respect for others. Nayeli had taught him that life was not merely about survival or success, but about building connections, embracing responsibility, and learning continuously. For Nayeli, the journey was equally transformative. She had always been strong, disciplined, and independent, yet John's world offered lessons in collaboration, trust, and the value of shared labor in different forms. She admired his commitment to his land and his people, his willingness to grow and adapt, and his determination to balance both worlds. In John, Nayeli found not only a partner but also a student and a companion who could meet her in mutual respect and shared purpose. Despite the progress, they were aware that the road ahead would not always be easy. Challenges from neighbors, unforeseen events on the ranch, and the constant negotiation between two cultures required ongoing effort and attention. Yet John and Nayeli approached each day with patience, empathy, and a sense of shared responsibility. Every obstacle was an opportunity to deepen their bond, to refine their understanding of each other, and to reinforce the foundation of trust and respect that had brought them together. By the end of the season, John and Nayeli had achieved a delicate balance. Their partnership had grown stronger, shaped by the interplay of two worlds and two ways of life. They had learned to communicate, compromise, and support one another, turning potential conflict into growth and understanding. John saw that Nayeli was not only a warrior, but also a teacher, a guide, and a true partner. Nayeli recognized that John was not only a protector of the land, but also a companion capable of understanding, respect, and love. One evening, as the sun set over the plains, John and Nayeli sat together on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The sky was painted in shades of gold and pink, and the wind carried the familiar scents of grass, earth, and distant wildflowers. They did not speak for a long while, simply enjoying the quiet and the presence of one another. In that moment, both understood that their journey was ongoing but meaningful. They had faced challenges, learned from each other, and built a life that respected both worlds. John took Nayeli's hand and felt the warmth and strength in her grip. He realized that despite the differences, despite the struggles, they were stronger together. Nayeli looked at him, her eyes reflecting the same understanding and resolve. Together, they had navigated the challenges of two worlds, creating a partnership rooted in courage, respect, and shared purpose. The plains stretched endlessly before them, a symbol of both freedom and responsibility. John knew that their journey was far from over, but he also knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and Nayeli would face them together. The union of their worlds, their experiences, and their hearts had created a bond that could endure the test of time, grounded in trust, understanding, and unwavering commitment. The days following John's acceptance of Nayeli's proposal were filled with anticipation, preparation, and a sense of purpose neither of them had fully experienced before. Their bond had grown strong through shared challenges, learning, and respect, and now they faced the most significant step of all, embracing their union formally, in a way that honored both their worlds. John had come to understand that this was not merely a marriage of obligation. It was a partnership built on courage, trust, and admiration. Nayeli, too, felt the weight of this moment, aware that it symbolized not only personal commitment, but also a bridge between her culture and John's. Preparation for the ceremony was unlike anything John had seen. Nayeli's people joined in with guidance and support, offering advice on rituals and traditions that held deep meaning in their culture. The setting was simple yet powerful, a clearing near the creek where John had first spent time recovering under Naomi's care. Fires were prepared for cooking, tents were arranged for shelter, and a circle of stones marked the sacred space where the ceremony would take place. Each element reflected careful thought, a balance between respect for tradition and the practical realities of frontier life. John felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as he prepared. He had always been confident in his work on the ranch, capable of handling any challenge the land could present, yet this moment brought a different kind of intensity. It was personal, emotional, and deeply meaningful. He thought back to the day Naomi had saved his life, to the weeks they had spent learning from each other, and to the challenges they had faced while blending two very different worlds. All of it had led to this moment, and John understood the significance of the path they had chosen together. Naomi, for her part, moved with calm assurance. She dressed simply but elegantly, adorned with symbolic elements that reflected her heritage. Her expression was steady, yet her eyes revealed the depth of emotion she felt. This was a union not only of two people, but also of their experiences, values, and futures. Naomi's presence reminded John of the strength, wisdom, and resilience that had first drawn him to her. She was more than a warrior. She was a guide, a companion, and now, the partner with whom he would share his life. The ceremony began as the sun rose, casting a golden light across the plains. John and Naomi stood side by side in the circle of stones, surrounded by their friends, neighbors, and Naomi's people. The atmosphere was one of reverence, respect, and quiet joy. An elder from Naomi's tribe spoke first, offering words about honor, courage, and the responsibilities of partnership. He emphasized that marriage was not merely a bond of affection, but a union that required commitment, understanding, and continuous growth. John listened intently, absorbing every word, feeling its resonance with the journey he and Naomi had already undertaken. As the ceremony continued, Naomi's traditions blended seamlessly with John's world. Simple yet meaningful gestures were exchanged. The sharing of water from a single vessel, a symbol of unity and cooperation. The tying of hands with cords, representing the connection of two lives, and the presentation of symbolic items that reflected their respective cultures. John marveled at the beauty of these traditions, understanding that they were more than rituals. They were lessons, values, and expressions of trust and respect. Throughout the ceremony, John and Naomi exchanged vows, not only promising love and companionship, but also mutual support, respect, and dedication to a shared life. John spoke of his commitment to honor Naomi's culture, to learn continuously, and to face the challenges of life together. Naomi spoke of her promise to walk beside John, to respect his experiences, and to guide their shared journey with wisdom and courage. The words were simple yet profound, capturing the essence of the bond they had built over weeks of learning, struggle, and mutual growth. After the formal elements of the ceremony, the couple participated in a quiet moment of reflection. They sat together near the creek, holding hands, and looked across the plains that had witnessed the beginning of their journey. John thought about the day he had been saved, the days of healing and teaching, and the challenges they had faced while learning to blend their worlds. Naomi reflected on the courage, trust, and respect that had brought them to this point. Both recognized that their union was more than a symbolic act. It was a continuation of the journey they had started together, one grounded in shared values and mutual understanding. The days following the ceremony were filled with joy, learning, and the quiet work of building a life together. John and Naomi settled into a rhythm that balanced both worlds, blending ranch life with Apache traditions. They tended to the land and animals, prepared meals together, and shared stories, laughter, and quiet reflection. Every day was an opportunity to learn from one another, to support each other, and to strengthen the bond that had begun in a moment of danger and had grown through shared experience. Neighbors and friends began to recognize the depth of John and Nayeli's partnership. At first, some were skeptical, unsure of how the blending of cultures would work in practice. Yet, over time, they saw the strength, respect, and understanding that characterized the couple's relationship. Nayeli's presence brought wisdom and insight, while John's dedication and hard work grounded their life together. The partnership became a model of cooperation, demonstrating that differences could be embraced, learned from, and celebrated rather than feared or dismissed. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a broken fence, John paused to observe Nayeli. She moved with precision and confidence, her hands steady, her attention focused, yet her eyes occasionally met his with warmth and understanding. He realized that their relationship had transformed him in ways he had never anticipated. He was more patient, more observant, and more thoughtful. Nayeli had not only been his savior but also his teacher, guiding him toward a deeper understanding of life, courage, and connection. Nayeli, in turn, noticed John's growth. She saw the patience, respect, and attentiveness he brought to their shared life. He had embraced her traditions not out of obligation, but out of genuine appreciation and curiosity. She recognized that the union they had created was strong, not simply because of rituals or ceremonies, but because it was rooted in trust, understanding, and a willingness to grow together. The couple also faced challenges, as any life partnership does. Harsh weather, unpredictable events on the ranch, and occasional disagreements tested their patience and communication. Yet, each challenge became an opportunity to strengthen their bond. They learned to listen, compromise, and approach difficulties with calm and understanding. Over time, they discovered that the combination of their strengths, John's practical knowledge of the land and Nayeli's wisdom and skill, allowed them to overcome obstacles that might have seemed insurmountable alone. As months passed, John and Nayeli celebrated milestones together: the successful birth of a calf, the planting of crops, and the completion of improvements on the ranch. Each success was shared, each accomplishment a reminder of the partnership they had forged. They also continued to honor Nayeli's traditions, observing ceremonies and practices that strengthened their connection to her culture and to the land around them. John found that these traditions enriched his life, providing a sense of meaning, continuity, and community he had never experienced before. The emotional growth they experienced was equally significant. John discovered a depth of compassion, patience, and understanding within himself, inspired by Nayeli's example and guidance. Nayeli, in turn, learned the value of collaboration, trust, and partnership in new ways. Their relationship became a continuous exchange of lessons, support, and mutual admiration, reinforcing the idea that love and partnership were not static but dynamic, requiring attention, effort, and care. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John and Nayeli sat together on the porch of the small house John had built. The sky glowed with shades of orange, pink, and purple, casting long shadows across the plains. John turned to Nayeli and said softly, "I never imagined that being saved would lead to this life. You have taught me more than I ever thought possible, not just about survival but about life, respect, and love." Nayeli smiled, her eyes reflecting the same warmth and understanding. "And you have shown me that trust, patience, and partnership can build a life strong enough to weather any challenge. Together, we have created something neither of us could have done alone." In that moment, the weight of their journey became clear. From the day John had been ambushed on the plains, through weeks of healing, learning, and adaptation, to the acceptance of their union and the blending of their worlds, they had grown together. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and cultural differences, and emerged with a bond that was resilient, meaningful, and enduring. The future stretched ahead of them like the endless plains. John knew there would be challenges, unexpected events, and moments of doubt, but he also knew that with Naeli by his side, they could face anything. Their union was more than a marriage. It was a partnership built on courage, respect, and love. They had discovered the power of connection, the strength of shared purpose, and the importance of understanding, compromise, and mutual support. Together, they walked into the next chapter of their lives, guided by the lessons of the past and the promise of the future. The ranch, once a symbol of John's solitary life, now represented a shared life of work, learning, and growth. Naeli's presence transformed the land into a place of balance, harmony, and partnership. The plains were not only a home, but also a testament to the courage, resilience, and love that had brought them together. As the stars emerged in the night sky, John and Naeli sat side by side, reflecting on the journey that had led them here. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, surprises, and opportunities for growth, but they were confident that together, they could face whatever came their way. Their story, which had begun with danger and uncertainty, had transformed into a tale of trust, courage, and enduring partnership. In the quiet of that night, surrounded by the vastness of the plains, John and Naeli understood the truth of their journey. Life's greatest challenges often lead to the most meaningful connections, and true partnership is built on respect, trust, and shared courage. They had found in each other not only love, but also a companion capable of walking beside them through every trial, every triumph, and every moment of discovery. The plains stretched endlessly around them, silent yet full of possibility. John felt a deep sense of gratitude and hope. Naeli leaned close, her hand in his, a steady presence that had become both anchor and inspiration. Together, they faced the future with courage, determination, and unwavering commitment. Their story, born from an act of bravery, had blossomed into a life of partnership, respect, and love that would endure across the plains, across cultures, and across time.